Hi Booktube, and welcome to a tag video. This is another joint tag, an original tag that I have invented along with Meg at Books Off the Beaten Path. It's a seasonal tag because we just felt like we wanted to do one after having done the trick or treat tag at Halloween. So this is the Secret Santa tag. And if you were wanting to do it, the point of the tag is to pick 5 Booktube creators and imagine that you had to buy them a book as a Secret Santa gift. Now you can have an alternative, that's perfectly fine, but you need to choose what you might buy them as a book for a Secret Santa present. Okay, these are the 5 booktubers that I'm going to pretend I'm buying a book for as a Secret Santa present. Of course, they'll watch this video, so now they'll know, but of course we haven't actually agreed to do a Secret Santa, so it's no problem. And obviously I have to start with my co-creator, Meg, at Books Off the Beaten Path. Now, when I was writing this script, which was some time ago, my first thought was, aha, I do know that Meg, she likes a suspenseful story. It can be a bit spooky, usually has a female lead, and she's more likely to like a book that's older than a book that's more recent, or at least none of the books that she's read that are more recent she's really ended up being pleased with, I think with a couple of exceptions. So I was all set to buy her because I knew she'd read Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier and Jamaica Inn, so I thought, aha, I knew the person who watches television had read The House on the Strand and thought it was fantastic. I wanted to read it, and I thought, yeah, that's the perfect book. And then subsequently, just before we went to film, I found out she already owns it, and she was keen to do a buddy read with me, and so we're doing a buddy read of The House on the Strand by Daphne du Maurier this month. So great. So wonderful, except I still have to think of a Secret Santa present. The other author I'm sure she's mentioned reading is Anne Rice. I think she said that she's read Interview with the Vampire, which I've also read. So I thought, perhaps I can take a chance on some vampire fiction. So I'm thinking, I don't know if it shows on camera. Oh yes, just near on the shelf right on this side here, I have a copy of Let the Right One In by John Ajvide Lindqvist, and I've owned it for ages, and I've wanted to read it. I know it's a vampire story. I'm a little nervous. I'm wondering if it's too scary. So perhaps I'd buy Meg a copy of that as well and say, okay, it might be less scary for me if I just knew somebody else were reading it at the same time. That just grounds me in some kind of reality. And saying that, it is supposed to be a bit on the dark side. So maybe it's too dark. Maybe it's too dark. So I have an alternative. If that's too dark, then I think I would try and go the other way and try to look for something that has a mystery to it and is more modern, but a bit lighter. And for that, I'm going to choose a British author, and it is Richard Osman, who is a television personality. And normally that would be a big no-no for me, but he's the one of those television personalities that I think actually could write their own good story. And I believe he has. He's written several now murder mysteries, and the first one was titled The Thursday Murder Club. And so that's the one that I would buy Meg to see if that was her kind of thing, because then I could let her know, there's a series, this goes on. Now, The Thursday Murder Club is about 4 people, 2 women and 2 men. They live in a community for older people. They're all 4 of them are in their 80s. And you would think, we're not going to get much of an exciting story here, but these 4 people decide that what they're going to do, based on what they did in their previous lives, is solve cold cases. And I just think that just sounds so inviting. I want to read it myself, so that could easily be another buddy read. So I might get her that and say, let's try this. Yes, it is more recent vintage. So yeah, but I do think it's light and not so, might remind her more of vintage fiction than some other mystery novels that she's tried in the recent past. Okay, second booktuber, Joseph Francis Burton. I'm going to buy you 2 books as Secret Santa presents. The safest option, I think, for buying you a book, Joe, is to try to pick something that deals with early Christianity in one way or another. However, The danger, of course, is that you may already know about it, may already have read it. It might be old news to you. So these 2 volumes are gambles, but I'm gambling that maybe you haven't laid eyes on these 2 books before. The first book, therefore, Joe, I'm going to get for you is this, The Myth of the Magus, and this is by Eliza M. Butler. It was written in 1947, and Eliza Butler was the Schrödinger Professor of German at Cambridge. In fact, she was the first woman to be appointed to that post. And what the book focuses on, it wants to talk through several examples of that archetype of the human who's extraordinary and has supernatural abilities. The reason I bought it and read it back in the early 2000s, and what I'm going to do, Joe, I'm going to put the table of contents up so you can see which legends Butler picks up and covers. What drew me to the book was that she had a section where Jesus is put together with Simon Magus, and the title of the section is The Downfall of the Magus, and that made me really curious. I thought, where's she going with that? I need to know. And each chapter is a biography, if you like, of these legendary figures and what has been believed about them. Joe, the second book you might already own. I just have this gut feeling. I don't know why. But the full title of the second book that I'm choosing is The Mystery Religions, a study in the religious background of early Christianity by Samuel Angus. And this came out in 1928. Now, Samuel Angus was professor of New Testament and church history at Sydney University in Australia from 1915 to 1943. And he's published a lot of books that deal with early Christianity. And what this book is setting out to do is to show that the appeal of Christianity in its earliest years was largely due, he thinks, to how much it resembled or came to resemble, I think you'll understand that, the ancient mystery religions of the time, which had a lot of followers. And if I remember correctly, Angus was convinced that Christianity absorbed or transferred mystery religion beliefs into the new faith. It was a book I read to get better grounding in what original Christianity actually was, as opposed to, the line that I was fed in the sort of fundamentalist church that I attended, which was that there was this pure substance called true Christianity, which existed from the time of Jesus and then somehow got messed up. Angus goes some way to muddying the waters a bit there and saying, no, it wasn't as nice and tidy as that. And that's no news to you, Joe. I mean, that's what you talk about in a lot of your videos. I do want to show you, though, the inscription inside my particular copy, because it made me laugh, and it was probably one of the other reasons I bought this book. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, here we go. And see if I can hold it to camera in a way that it shows. So it says, it's going to bring you down. And then it's dated the 7th of September, or it could be the 9th of July, 1998. So I don't know who bought this book for who, but I get the feeling, do you not, that it was bought for someone whose Christian beliefs were maybe a lot like mine, very set, and full of a lot of mythology about early Christianity that needed debunking, I guess. I mean, this is a harsh way to do it. I don't know that I would do this to someone who believed as strongly as I used to. I think you'd have to go, personally, I'd go about it more kindly, but there we go. For whatever reason, that's how that book came to move from being new into somebody's hands. And then maybe they rejected it. And maybe that's the reason it was there for me to buy, was whoever had it in 1998 read a little bit of it and thought, whoa, danger, and then passed it on. And that's how I came to have my copy. Next booktuber we are buying for is Marion. Hi, Marion. Now, I know that you like classic fiction, but you also like contemporary literary fiction. You're not afraid to go anywhere around the world. That's quite clear. That gives me broad scope, but of course it's also scary, because it means that, am I going to find a book you haven't already read? And am I going to find a book that you enjoy? I must admit, while I was reading, it's a recent title, which you might have seen the review for, A God Strolling in the Cool of the Evening by Mario de Cavallo. Now, as I was reading that, I thought, I think Marion might really like this. I did think Joe might as well. Joe's already told me quite firmly, yes, he's looking out for it, because that book is set during the reign of Marcus Aurelius in the Roman Empire, and we are out on the sort of far reaches of the Roman Empire in what is now Portugal, and we're with a Roman citizen who is a governor of the town, and he's talking about the difficulties he had, and among the many difficulties he had as being ruler was how to deal with Christians who were still a mystery to most people, and yet there they were. It was a sect that was growing, and its people had very strong beliefs, and some of those strong beliefs were different than the cultural paradigms of Rome, and so they gave this governor many moments of concern as he tried to come to some understanding about the beliefs. And since I've started this, let's do 2 books per person, I might throw in, on a gamble that you haven't encountered this author yet, I might throw in a copy of Last Orders by Graham Swift. Swift is, I've read 3 of his novels, and you know how unusual it is for me to read more than one work by any one author. But what Swift is good at doing is creating really engaging stories from the lives of very ordinary people. And this was his first novel I read, but I think it was his 3rd novel. And it's about 4 older men who take a day trip in the same car, and they need to travel from London down to the south coast, I think, to Southampton. And that's because they want to scatter the ashes of someone they all knew who's recently died. And the journey has little ups and downs, and those little ups and downs, they kind of, they spark tensions between the men, things that haven't been spoken, things that haven't been resolved, and that all builds as they get closer and closer to the pier and ready to put these ashes into the sea. And I found it a fascinating book, and it was one of those that once you picked it up, it was very difficult to put down. Next Booktube creator is Dan at Redunculous. Now, talk about widely read. Dan, you're so widely read that there are times when I'm watching your material when even I feel lost, when even I think, Dan, where are we? I don't know any of these books. It's perfect. It's exactly what I wanted. So please don't stop doing it for my sake. Absolutely not. But it means that you would be a tough call to buy for, because there's nowhere you haven't been literarily. You go into all corners looking for interesting books. I felt maybe my safest bet would be to pick 2 award-winning Canadian novels, just because Canada can tend to be a little bit off radar sometimes. Maybe not in your case, but there we go. I have to do something. So this is what I'm going to try. I would purchase for you a copy of The Shipping News by E. Annie Proulx, which you can just see in the background there at the top of that stack. Pulitzer Prize winning. Believe it was published in 1990 something. And it is a story set in Newfoundland, which is Canada's easternmost province, not something I probably need to tell you, but it is a Canadian love story. And I can say that because you think, well, how is it Canadian in it? And I think it's just because it's not just about love of a person for a person. It's also about love for the landscape, love for family, and love for that whole experience which European people had who came over to North America, is that setting up, that establishing of themselves, and what happened subsequently. That figures greatly in The Shipping News. And the second book I'd buy, which was also prize winning, is The Englishman's Boy by Guy van der Heeg. And van der Heeg's book, it's fiction, but it is retelling a bit of little-known history. It's about a tragedy that happened in 1873 called the Cypress Hills Massacre. And that happened in an area right around the US-Canadian border, dividing what is now the province of Saskatchewan from the state of Montana. I have read both books, Dan, and I thought they were fantastic. In fact, doing this tag, what it's made me think of is how much I really would love to reread both those books because they're so powerful. They were also pre-Booktube and pre-YouTube. And I think what I'd love to do is review them to make sure they get visibility again, because I think they're worth revisiting. I think if they were published now, they'd be getting a lot of attention from Booktube creators. And finally, The last creator I'm picking is Kim from Kim the Lifelong Reader. Kim is new. She just started a channel in August, which is fantastic. And I think I discovered her because I was searching for Booktube newbies. And when I search for Booktube newbies, I often look for older faces just because I love the experience. And you are experienced, Kim. You've read a lot. And so again, here's a gamble here. Whatever I pick for you, you might be really familiar with. You might have read it, reread it, but here goes, okay? What I would choose first on my list would be The Memory Keeper's Daughter by Kim Edwards. Now, again, it's a risky thing because this was a multi-million seller in the United States in 2007. So there's a good possibility that you might have read it. I remember being given it by someone who'd been given it, and they were moving it along and they were saying, this is such an incredible book, you must read it. And I picked it up and it absolutely was. It was hypnotic because of the emotional, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? Immediately it stirred up strong emotions in you as a reader. And you just thought, I can't just put this book down now. You know, I just can't. I need to know what happens to the characters. Edwards is an assistant professor of English at the University of Kentucky. And this book is looking at a family secret, right? The kind that it should never have become a secret, and how things were resolved. That's what it looks at. And so, yeah, you might have read this already, in which case you already know how powerful the book is. I no longer have my copy. I passed it on again to another person that I thought they will be as moved by this story as I am. But if you have read it, would love to hear your thoughts. I know what might be a safer gamble, actually. When I did my review of Melissa Green's Color is the Suffering of Light, you commented on the book being interesting. You went and bought some of her poetry. I think you put a poem of hers in my comments or by email. And I remember just, again, I was still wowed by that woman's writing and her poetry. I think you would be wowed by her prose. So if I could find another copy, because I've moved my copy on, okay, it's gone to a good home, promise you. But that's what I might get you, is a copy of that book, because I think you'd love the prose in it, because so much of her poetry comes into her prose, shapes her prose. And I just think that would really, really work for you. And that's the tag, everybody. Very easy. I think most of you would have some ideas already of what you would like to buy for other booktubers, were you given the opportunity to give them a book for Christmas. So I've tagged loads of people down in my description box. I imagine Meg will be tagging people when she does her version. And we've given you guys as much of December as we can so that you can try to fit it in. I know I am so backed up with tags. And for those of you who have tagged me and are wondering, do you not notice I've tagged you? Yes, I have. And I have scripts that are backed up, and you're going to get more of them, I promise. But at the moment, I'm also reading a lot. It's just winter. Oh, you stay at home and you read, and and so I have a lot to cover. But we'll get there in the end, because I plan to be on Booktube for a while yet. So everyone, hope your reading is going well. Hope you're coping with all the demands of holiday and yada yada while you're trying to get your reading and your Booktube creating done. And I'll see you again in a few days' time. Take care. Bye-bye.